Lubbock is guaranteed to have a new mayor for the first time in 6 years after the upcoming municipal election. There are 5 candidates vying for the seat. Tonight, they will answer questions about key community issues, many of which were submitted by citizens.
Candidates, tell us why you are running for mayor of Lubbock. And we'll start off with you, Mr. Payne.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It's good when we get out and actually visit with people and get our message out. I know I'm very honored to be sitting here with these other men. It's been a really neat process for me to see others that are stepping out and getting involved in their communities, because I think collectively we all believe that's what it's about, is the betterment of our community. As to the reason why I'm running is I've been involved in this community, heavily involved for the last 22 years. I moved here in 1992 from the big city of Post, Texas, and I went to Texas Tech. I got an accounting degree, and then I worked as a short period of time as an auditor, and then I went to law school, and that's where I met my lovely wife. We've been married for nearly 22 years, and I brought her back here to Lubbock. I was a part of the district attorney's office and the federal attorney's office for nearly 10 years, and then I've been involved in the community in various ways, from serving on boards to teaching Sunday school. And Lubbock matters. And the question I'm posing to people more and more as I get into this process is not why are you running, but thank you for running. And thank you for all those that are involved in community service, because this is hard. But it's important. And it's important especially for generations that move up to get involved in their communities, to get off the sidelines, as I say, start getting involved in our communities and try to make a difference. And at the end of the day, I'm running because I feel like I was called. I feel like I'm supposed to do this. And so I will continue to do the very best I can. If I'm elected, I'm going to do the very best I can for the city that I love so very much.
Candidates, how closely have you followed city council meetings and developments in the past?
In 2001, when I joined the county government, and county is obviously different than city, but when you work in law enforcement and some other agencies, you're heavily involved with city and planning as well. And so I've been involved with city and county government since 2001. And then we started having kids. We have 4 daughters, and life kind of catches up in there in the 2005, 6s and 7s, and you kind of lose track of time. In 2016, I actually asked to be part of CPAC, and I actually requested to be part of some of these committees, and I was turned down. I don't think I was country club material. I've never been involved in the country club. But at that point, then it turned up another gear for me of saying, I'm going to start paying attention to what's going on with our 2040 development. I've been involved as an attorney with some of the UDC development and looking intricately into those issues. So I've been involved in paying attention to city council meetings and development since 2001. The greatest thing that ever happened to some of us when we're working is when you can look at these online. And I watch, there's very few that I've ever missed over the last 4 to 5 years because I pay attention. And I want to get more heavily involved. And obviously, if I win this election, I should be at every meeting. But I've been heavily involved in the city council meetings for at least the 4 to 5 years, and probably at least say involved for the last 21 years.
The next question is, if elected, what would your priorities be as mayor?
Mr. Payne.
Thank you. I believe that in a municipal level and in our backyard, the job of a local government is to take care of core fundamental services. That's the ground floor. Those are the absolute necessities. That's their job number one. And then you can move up the ladder to wants after you get to the needs. And the number one need is public safety. I think that's not a question. In fact, I think the number one function of a local government is public safety. That doesn't just include police, that includes fire services, that includes dispatch services, that includes first responders and EMTs, and that includes good roads and good streets. That includes code enforcement. Those are all public safety issues that are the ground floor issues that we have to take control of and make sure they're done on time, within budget, and efficiently. So that would be issue number one. I think next one also is the tax issue. We're coming up on new legislation where you have to talk about a no new revenue rate. And you can't just say because your appraisal has skyrocketed and we have people that are on fixed incomes and people that don't have the ability to earn more income with inflation and recession, you can't just continue to increase the property tax value. So we've got to look for ways to cut some wasteful spending. We've got to get smart. We've got to make hard decisions with the budget, just like you do in your own homes. You have to make good decisions in what you do and decide what are the necessities and what are the priorities. So ground floor, fundamental basics, public safety, taxation and wasteful spending, and then just being more efficient as a government. And that's customer service. When you're calling someone and they tell you, I'll get back with you, or they say, well, I can't get to you and you're on hold for 45 minutes, we need to work and address those issues and be a government that says yes to the citizens instead of always getting in our way and saying no.
A bond package that would have funded needed road repairs throughout the city failed during last year's November election. That work is still needed. This one comes from a citizen-submitted question. How will you see infrastructure projects through completion, and how else could the city's infrastructure be improved?
So I think completion is an issue. Anytime with government, I'm going to say we're going to do this, but then the completion, and that was the first part of your question, I believe. So as far as following through, you have to get in a better cadence of bringing these issues in front of the people. You have to get in a better cadence of bringing bond packages in front of the people and letting them make the decisions on what you do and you do not spend their money on. Because remember, it's your money, not the government's. And so with that, it also becomes a public safety issue. Bottom line is we have to get those roads and streets done. It has to be done. There is no reason for any city street to be dirt in our city. There's no reason on the east side or on the north or west side that we should have dirt roads in our city any longer. Those have to be done. There's no reason why children are driving on roads that remain incomplete. So if you do a better job of being positive and an effective leader and people have confidence in the leadership, they're going to go, okay, we trust you, we're going to go with that. If they don't have confidence, they're going to do what they did last time and say no. So positive, efficient, and effective leadership can help, and bringing that back up very quickly because, again, it's going to cost us more money. Second, what is needed for development in the future?
Yeah, what other infrastructure needs do you see?
Well, we have to continue to grow with our streets and roads, but we also have to start not only focus on where we continue to grow in north and south, but we have to focus on infill and redevelopment in north and east. You have to pay attention to what you have. Any city that's ever tried to just continue to grow in any direction and doesn't take care of what they built and what was originally what they had always fails. You have blight and you have places where they don't grow. And we've got to do infill and redevelopment in North and East Lubbock and make sure we're moving forward and having the resources that everyone needs to continue to grow in our city.
Lubbock has a rich religious heritage. Those roots tell us that the community is judged by the powerful within. It's not, but by the conditions of its poor and powerless. That's how it's judged. What specific plans do you have to improve the conditions of the living poor and the powerless in our city?
I'm not ashamed to say that I'm an imperfect follower of Jesus Christ. I'm very open about my faith. And that is a very integral part of our communities, and it has been. There's a long tradition of working with government and churches to get things done, and we have to continue in doing that. But first of all, you have to identify the problem. Anytime there's an issue, you've got to first recognize it and not bury your head in the sand and just ignore it like it's going to go away. You've got to say we've got a problem and we've got to address it. I think me growing up in a really small town, it probably looked more like this room than anybody that grew up in Lubbock because it was a very diverse small town. And you all had to pull together or you didn't get anything done. And we've got to start pulling in the same direction as opposed to tugging against each other. But we identify those problems. We've got problems, and we could talk about those all day. And then you have to start listening. You identify the problem, and then you listen to other people about what their ideas for resolutions are to problem solve. And once you identify it, then you listen to it, and you start looking at the conditions and how we can go about working together as a community to fix those problems. Some of that's development in the other north and east side of town. Sometimes that's looking at, as I've talked about, development and letting city and agencies start to work to improve the perception of areas so people want to move into those areas and improve the perception of different neighborhoods and work together as a city to do that. Some of that is to coordinate with our churches and our NGOs to make sure that we have all the resources available that we can as a city. But it starts with listening, it starts with working together and pulling together as one as opposed to tugging against each other like we've been wont to do.
We've seen many changes in Lubbock's utility services in recent years, including Lubbock Power and Light's transition to the ERCOT power grid. This is another submitted question. What changes, if any, would you like to see at LP&L as we will soon transition to a customer choice market?
Well, once this transition happens, Lubbock Power and Light, or what used to be LP&L, will be not the distribution line. It'll be primarily responsible for transmission, and then you'll have these other service providers that will be involved in the distribution. And with free markets, sometimes it can be very good, because with competition, sometimes rates can lower. It's going to take a change. I've seen these models in South Texas and some other areas, and they will bring you on board and promise you, these low rates, and then they will increase them. So people are going to have to be educated about what happens when the system takes place. It can save people dollars, and it can stop the large spikes that we see that increase, but we're going to have to pay attention. And then the next question that I think everybody has to talk about, and I think whoever's on this next council will have to address, is what do you do with LP&L? Is that something that we can utilize to get out of debt? Is that something that we need to talk to the people about what we're going to do with that? Is that something that's going to bring money into the coffers of the city? Do we need to be in business? But again, a lot of times it just comes down to the city helping educate the neighborhoods and the people about what happens with the transition. We've talked about it already with the roads and streets bond package. When you don't get citizens and committees involved and get out there to try to help the people understand what's going to happen, you run into problems. And so we've got to be very mindful of that and help the transition, help the people with the transition, and hopefully it'll help us save money.
The next question, if you are elected mayor, how would you encourage residential and commercial development in our economically disadvantaged communities, like those in North and East Lubbock?
For time reasons, I'm going to add to that. How do you balance that with growth in newer parts of town?
Thank you. The old saying is retail follows housing. So you've got to start with housing. And it's not just new development. It's got to be infill and using the lots that are here and getting some new housing moving forward. And I think that was the vision that going back to 2018, when you look at the 2040 plan, the problem is then you get some things that have happened over the last few years that have kind of slowed down some of those neighborhood development plans. But you've got to get housing, and that can come through. I represent builders that want to build over here. This is the most beautiful part of town. This is where it started. Is you have the Canyon Lakes areas. It's a beautiful area, and you have builders that want to build over here. But sometimes we get the government in the way of moving forward, and so we've got to get the government out of the way and then move forward with assisting. You can waive fees. You can waive permit fees to get people encouraged to want to build new houses and develop over here. You can waive impact fees on those people that are creating new infrastructure, because that's not going to apply necessarily towards infill and just residential buildings. But we've got to get the retail moving forward. You can work with the neighborhoods and neighborhood associations to continue to move forward, trying to get new housing, getting people encouraged to want to move over here, taking the perception away of negativity and moving forward with the perception of positivity. Again, I think that's one of the big issues. Targeted maintenance is also another way that you can help with development. You can get people that want to target specific areas and help with maintenance. And I'll tell you another big issue that we don't talk about. I'm trying to get to your second question, Sarah. But we have a lot of landlords that move over here. And you know what? They don't follow the rules. They don't do what's supposed to be done. And they just let things go, and they don't take care of it. And we've got to get our city and code enforcement on those people that are just renting out and make sure that they're following the rules and make sure we have good maintenance and good developed places, infill, develop, get the housing market moving, and retail will then follow.
All right, again, in the interest of time, I'm going to expedite us to our last question. Lubbock is an increasingly diverse city. What would it mean to you to represent both citizens who agree with you and those who see things differently?
Thank you. So professionally, I live in a world of disagreement. I know everybody wants to make the lawyer joke at this point, but as a prosecutor, I file with the defense side. As a defense side, I file with the prosecutor. And I'm a problem solver because I do live in that world, and I have multiple different practice areas: real estate, criminal, family law, divorce. And you learn how to be a problem solver, and you learn to deal with people of all races, all groups, all ethnicities. You just learn to deal with people in my profession, and I feel like I'm good at that. From a personal standpoint of view, I grew up, and I come back to my roots. I've been in Lubbock for 30 years. This is where my home is. But I grew up in that small town where my dad was a little small town pharmacist, and you kind of the de facto doctor if the doctor moved out of town. And my dad took care of everybody. That's who my dad was. And he took care of the poor at 2 o'clock in the morning. If they needed a prescription filled, he took care of everybody in town. That's just, our house was a revolving door of people. And that was because he loved people. And I think he passed that on. I think public service for all of us is probably generational. You just don't step up and say, I'm going to do this. I think you're called to do it, and it becomes something you feel like you need to do. And I feel like I'm called to do this. And I feel like if you stay with the motto of just loving on people and trying to pull in the same direction, you're going to have disagreement. I guarantee you we all don't agree on every issue. But if we do this for the betterment of our community and we focus on taking care of our community, pulling in the same direction, we can make this better, and we can make Lubbock a better place. And I say it, it's cheesy, but we can make it even better than it is. And that's what I want to do. And I think it's exciting to be able to work together and pull together with people that you don't always agree with. That's the cool part of life.
For more information on voting, visit votelubbock.org. And for more local election news coverage, visit ttupublicmedia.org. Candidates, we want to thank you for participating in tonight's West Texas Town Hall.
Also, we want to thank you for coming out to this forum and being a part of this discussion that we've been having. Thank you.